The courtroom was still, the sort of silence that weighed heavily. Not a phone rang, not a page turned. The entire room had eyes fixed on Robyn Brown as she entered the stand, her hands clearly shaking, her eyes wide with fear. This was what no one was predicting. The most devoted of Kody Brown's wives, the one that always had his back, was about to take the stand and testify against him. The judge asked her if she needed a minute. Robyn shook her head slowly. She knew there was no going back. A subpoena had put her there. But what happened next was up to her. She could lie to cover the man she once considered her soulmate, or she could tell the truth, even if it broke what remained of the Brown family's broken image. And then the sound came on. Covertly recorded secretly by one of the older kids, the audio was brought into evidence. A shaky, muffled recording, but the voice, unmistakably, Kody's, angry, loud, unfiltered. His words sliced through the courtroom like a knife. He was screaming, not yelling with anger. This was different. It was venom-filled, specific. He mentioned betrayal, disobedience, and how the children had been poisoned by their mothers. You could hear one of the children faintly crying in the background. There was no longer a matter of denying it. This was not a matter of a failed marriage. This was emotional trauma, and someone witnessed it. Robyn's face contorted in listening. Her hands flew to her mouth, her eyes brimming with tears. The calm mask she had assumed for years split wide apart. Everyone believed they knew her. Robyn, the peacekeeper, Kody's defender. But now, before cameras, microphones, and a courtroom full of strangers, she was just a mother listening to her husband yell at their children. "Do you know the voice in that tape, Mrs. Brown?" The prosecutor inquired softly. She nodded, barely able to speak. "It's Kody." That was the first coffin nail. Kody refused to look at her. He remained rigid at the defense table, teeth locked, eyes fixed straight ahead, as if he could will himself away from the courtroom. But the harm was already done. His allies, what few he had left, were already fidgeting in their seats. Because for the first time, Robyn wasn't covering for him. She was validating what others had only been brave enough to whisper. And that's when the courtroom came wide open. Further audio was in the queue. Discussions that had previously been behind closed doors were now ringing in the courtroom speakers. In one of them, Kody was heard dismissing the children's mental health, joking about the possibility of therapy. In another, he referred to Janelle as weak and Christine as toxic, accusing them of turning the family against him. But the moment that truly shook the room was a whisper. A single line Robyn had recorded on her own phone. "I can't keep defending this. The kids are breaking." There was a collective inhale in the courtroom. That line didn't just change the tone, it shifted the direction of the entire case. If you thought Robyn was always on Kody's side, think again. In private, she had begun keeping records, conversations, phone calls, fights. She wasn't the stupid, blindly loyal wife everyone took her for. Perhaps she had been once, but then she ceased, not for revenge, but desperation. As the courtroom heard that last clip, Kody's face reddened to beet color. He slammed his fist on the table, earning a reprimand from the judge. But the facade had cracked. The smooth, charming TLC patriarch was no longer there. In his place was a man falling apart. Why now? That's everyone's question. Why would Robyn, after all those years of devotion, suddenly betray him? The explanation wasn't easy. Sources close to the family say she had attempted everything: family therapy, counseling, private interventions. Nothing worked. Kody became more dominating, more withdrawn, and more condescending in his disregard for the pain of their children. The last straw? A meltdown by one of the teenagers, who allegedly said to Robyn, "You always defend him. Who's defending us?" That line haunted her. She couldn't ignore it. And when the subpoena arrived, she didn't resist. She appeared, with recordings, with evidence, with the truth. And now, the court has no choice but to listen. Outside court, camera flashes popped. Critics and fans alike hung motionless in shocked silence. Some cried, some fumed, but most were just shocked. Because what had long been described as a chaotic but loving family dynamic was now being revealed to be something a lot darker. And much worse. This isn't just a family breaking down, it's a reality TV empire falling apart before your eyes. TLC executives reportedly are in crisis mode. What happens when the cornerstone couple of your most famous show ends up battling in court, with accusations of emotional abuse, financial manipulation, and betrayal. The contracts, the syndication, the brand itself, it's all under threat. And they have Robyn's testimony to thank for it. And still, Robyn kept crying. She wasn't sobbing for herself. She was sobbing for the children, for the years of deception, for the price of silence. This wasn't revenge. It was survival. Survival for finally putting the truth down on record, no matter how excruciating it was. And the audience? They're seeing every moment of it. Clips from the courtroom have already gone viral. The audio leaks, trending across every platform. TikTok, YouTube, Reddit, they're all dissecting Robyn's every word. Fans who once despised her are now conflicted. Is she a villain, or a victim who finally had enough? Only time will tell. But one thing's for sure, this is a moment that will change everything. Don't scroll past this. You're going to want to follow this story, because this is just the tip of the iceberg. What comes next? Kody's reaction, the aftermath of the kids, and what this does to the Sister Wives franchise, is speechless. It started around 9 a.m. on a hot Tuesday morning. The Flagstaff courthouse was encircled by news trucks, cameras, and an increasing number of fans and onlookers who had arrived expecting a view of the Brown family walking through the doors. The atmosphere was electric, but none more so than what was waiting to happen within the courtroom itself. Kody Brown, the former proud patriarch of the Sister Wives family, came surrounded by his attorneys. His face was impassive, but his demeanor said otherwise. Stiff shoulders, compressed lips, and obscured eyes behind dark glasses. He was gearing up for war. Across from him sat Robyn Brown, by herself, not with a lawyer, not with a team or a stylist. Just Robyn, her hands clasped tightly in her lap, her face white, her eyes everywhere but on Kody. She didn't dress up, nothing gaudy, no makeup illusions. She came to talk, not perform. The courtroom lights receded slightly as the judge came in, heralding the start of a hearing that would be one of the most widely discussed moments ever to come out of reality television. This was not merely a family court case, a public spectacle. It had erupted, with accusations running from emotional control to financial abuse. The state had opened an investigation into the Browns following several reports filed, not by fans only, but by members of the extended family, and eventually the older children themselves. The law to be applied here: abuse of common family funds. But the case was really about something more sinister. Was Kody Brown emotionally mistreating his family, and particularly his children, in ways that had been hidden behind the cameras of the TLC and scripted interviews for years? As the first witness was summoned, the courtroom was muffled into unnatural silence. It wasn't Robyn. It wasn't Christine or Janelle. It was someone nobody saw coming. One of the older children, who had emancipated themselves from the Brown family in a legally binding way just a few years previous. They testified in a steady, calm tone, but it was heartbreaking. They discussed being gaslit by their dad, how any form of opposition in the family was equated with betrayal, how Robyn was treated like the queen, and the other mothers were gradually edged out. They discussed endless nights spent listening to Kody rant for an hour about loyalty, respect, and being the head of the family. He made me feel like love had to be earned, and I was never good enough to earn it. The child testified on the stand, their voice shaking with tears even if not their eyes. That single sentence struck the room like a jolt. Kody sat forward, mouthing urgently to his attorney. Robyn, by contrast, sat motionless, not nodding, not shaking her head, simply listening, drinking in every word. Then the moment of anticipation for everyone. The clerk was calling her name. Robyn Alice Brown, step up to the stand. There was a frozen silence as she stood up. The room seemed to be motionless. Even the air had ceased to move. She moved with slow, measured footsteps. She promised to tell the truth. And then she sat down in front of the same judge who had ruled over hundreds of custody and financial cases, but never one like this. Mrs. Brown, the lawyer began, how would you describe your relationship with Mr. Brown in the last 2 years? Robyn gazed straight at the attorney. Her voice was soft but distinct. It's been hard. She hesitated. He wasn't the same man anymore. Drastic statement. Heavier silence. Everyone's attention on Kody. She continued to explain how, once Christine was gone, something inside Kody snapped. He became more controlling, more short-tempered. He started to disconnect from the rest of the family. isolating her, insisting on greater obedience from the children, and belittling the other wives daily. She confessed that she had attempted to keep the family intact, even if that meant standing up for things in which she did not believe. But then there was a moment when I thought being silent made me culpable, Robyn said, not meeting the eye of the stand but looking toward the public gallery, where some of her older children sat observing. She detailed how Kody would demand to see receipts for every purchase made by the other wives and how money from their shared TLC earnings began being rerouted to accounts under Kody's name alone, accounts Robyn only discovered much later. That's when the prosecutor asked the million-dollar question, "Did you ever feel emotionally manipulated by Mr. Brown?" Robyn hesitated. She glanced toward Kody for the first time. He stared back, his eyes blazing. She walked away. Yes, boom. That one word resonated through the courtroom like a gunshot. Yes, from Robyn, the woman who was supposed to be his supporter. The woman who always stood with him on TV even when the world criticized her. She detailed how he would take the kids hostage, wouldn't see them unless they apologized for disrespecting him. She described nights she cried herself to sleep, alternately torn with loyalty and fear. He'd say to me that I was lucky to have him, that other women were jealous of us. But I didn't feel lucky, I felt alone. The judge asked her to continue. And that's when she confessed that she'd begun taping conversations, not only to guard against herself, but because she was afraid no one would ever credit what she had to say. She'd provided 3 different recordings, each of which had already been certified. The first caught Kody berating one of their children for not showing up to a family meeting, blaming them for being brainwashed by Janelle. The second involved Kody scolding Robyn herself for not taking his side in a fight with Mary. But the third was what put everything on hold. "If they want war, I'll give them war. I'm the father. I make the rules. Not them. Not their mothers. Me." That was Kody, on tape, at full rage. And the courtroom responded. Gasps. Murmurs. Even the judge's face set. Kody's attorney protested, naturally, said it was taken out of context. But it was too late. And if you think that was dynamite, just wait until you hear what followed. Robyn had some bombshells too. She said she'd asked for therapy many times, for the children, for herself, for the family at large. Kody wouldn't do it, saying therapy is for people who can't fix things on their own. She explained the epiphany moment occurred when there was a fierce fight and one of the younger children told her, "Why do you always let him hurt us?" She had no response. That was the moment she knew silence would do greater damage than words. And the courtroom believed her. You could sense it in the air. No drama, no yelling. Just a woman cracking open years of emotional tension. Kody said nothing as he listened to her testimony. Nothing at all. But his flushed face, tight fists, and fleeing eyes said it all. This wasn't a testimony. It was a reckoning. When Robyn left the stand, the room was altered. The tenor of the trial was no longer technicalities and dollars. It was about consequences, hurt, and long overdue truth. Outside, the audience was getting bigger. Twitter was going crazy. Trends on Twitter such as #RobynSpeaks and #KodyOnTrial were going worldwide. And within that courtroom, it was one thing that was clear. This family will never be the same again. The commotion within the courtroom had yet to subside from Robyn's bombshell testimony. And on the streets, news organizations were racing to capture every second of this developing reality TV courtroom drama. But despite how gripping Robyn's disclosures were, nothing was going to prepare the courtroom for what was about to ensue. The judge ordered a short recess so Robyn could step down, and in seconds whispers filled the room. Rumor flew. Would Christine testify? Would Janelle? Mary? The most mysterious of them all. 10 minutes passed, then the judge came back, and the clerk announced the next witness, Christine Ruth Brown. The room collectively breathed. Christine entered, serene and calm, but not silent. She radiated the kind of confidence born only from enduring years of heartbreak and gaining power back. She did not project grief or fear. She projected strength. Christine's declaration began not with blame, but with background. She started off in the family's early years, how she had really believed in plural marriage principles, and how she made an attempt to bring up her children in a setting that seemed inclusive and secure. She confessed she had signed on willingly to the picture Kody had drawn, a family founded on faith, cohabitation, and unconditional love. But gradually, all that changed. Christine described a subtle change in family dynamics. beginning the instant Robyn became part of the family. Initially, she accepted Robyn, even stood up for Robyn when others wouldn't. Yet with the passage of time, Christine began to notice how Robyn's needs always took precedent. Kody's priorities changed, and not in private. He told me, Christine said matter-of-factly, I have to take care of Robyn. She needs me more than the others. That line provoked a gasp in the crowd. Even the judge hesitated. Christine explained how Kody would start spending a lot more time at Robyn's place, and the other wives and children were left to shift for themselves emotionally. Birthdays were ignored. Family dinners became a thing of the past. And when Christine complained, he called me dramatic, she said. He said I was jealous. Daring words. But Christine had more to say. She continued to describe how, over time, Kody tightened the purse strings progressively. The family's TLC income, hitherto distributed equally, started going into joint accounts held by Kody and, reputedly, Robyn. But whose accounts? Not the other wives. I began to notice things. Bills weren't getting paid. Our household budgets were cut down. And in the meantime, Robyn had a new nanny, a new SUV, and their house was being renovated. We weren't even having the heating repaired, she explained. That comparison drew a chilling portrait. The courtroom started linking dots between control of finances and manipulation of emotion. Christine presented spreadsheets, records, emails, even a text from Kody that said, you have to learn to give more. Robyn and I are holding everything together. You just need to trust us. That single message spoke volume. And in case that was not enough, Christine's last words left the court in shock. I didn't leave Kody because I lost love. I left because he stopped treating me like a wife and began treating me like a liability. She resigned. The courtroom hummed. And then the clerk called the next name, Janelle Brown. Whereas Christine injected emotion, Janelle injected receipts. Janelle's testimony was systematic, painstaking and devastating. She entered with a folder full of bank statements, notarized documents, and screenshots of shared reports documenting thousands of dollars being transferred from family accounts into private accounts in Kody's name. It wasn't mismanagement, Janelle testified. It was theft, masquerading as leadership. She described how the family had all agreed to put half of all TLC checks, cameo earnings, book sales and speaking fees into a central fund. All the households operated their own budget, and big-ticket items required group discussion. But then in late 2021, times changed. Kody asserted the burden of leadership, entitled him to restructure how funds were being used. All of a sudden, withdrawals were being made in secret. Business ventures were financed without discussion. Janelle testified. She once questioned Kody about a missing $40,000 from the joint account. His reply? It's not missing. It's reallocated. That quote went through the courtroom like a ripple. She then pulls out a printed email chain, showing how Kody used family funds to pay for a new mortgage on Robyn's home without telling the others. Christine and Mary did not know anything about their earnings being taken to support a household they don't live in. It only got worse. Janelle broke down, revealing how one of her children was forced to postpone a medical procedure because they lacked insurance coverage. Insurance Kody had assured would be covered under the family's collective health plan. I had to take out a personal loan, she whispered, her voice trembling, while Kody was purchasing new furniture for Robyn's living room. That juxtaposition, home furnishings over healthcare, was the tipping point that shattered even the most composed of observers. But at this juncture, Kody squirmed uncomfortably in his seat. His jaw clenched. His attorney jotted frantic notes, but the court was intent, unyielding. Janelle then offered a haunting observation. This wasn't about money. This was about control. He used money to control us, to keep us in order. And the court suddenly understood something greater was at stake. This was not merely a family disagreement over bank accounts. This was a tale of economic coercion, a system in which one man employed common money to control loyalty, restrict freedom, and punish dissidents. And then there was the last bombshell. Janelle presented a ledger, a detailed accounting of financial expenditures revealing how Robyn's household had collected more than 70% of all discretionary money from TLC earnings during the past 3 years. 70%, one family out of 5. The arithmetic was self-evident. The judge scanned the documentation, nodded slowly, and glanced at the defense. But it wasn't finished, because just as the session came to an end, the judge inquired, "Is Mary Brown in attendance?" The room shifted,
And then behind, quietly, nearly undetected, Mary stood. She came to the front. No theatrics, no apparent rage, only weary eyes and stubborn resolve. She didn't come to add flame. She came to validate it all. I remained silent for too long, Mary declared. That one statement impacted harder than any paper or dollar figure. She explained to the court that for years, she had reassured herself to stick it out through the treatment because she did believe in family. That Kody's coldness, his favoritism, and his remoteness were just phases. But they weren't, she said. They were patterns, they were choices, and they hurt. She attested that Kody had economically disallowed her after their emotional breakup, even though she continued her involvement in filming and promotional activities. He told me, "You're not my wife anymore, so I don't owe you anything." She said he used her for publicity, but excluded her when it was time to split the profits. Mary's final words were straightforward, but ones that no one will ever forget. "I don't want revenge. I want acknowledgement. And I want the truth to be seen." And with that she resigned. The courtroom was in stunned silence. And what happens next? Well, it's Kody's turn. But first, let us get there. Get ready, because in session 3 we explore the secret sound recordings played open court that not only stunned the judge but just may change everything you believe you know about this family. You could have heard a pin drop. With the consecutive testimonies of Robyn, Christine, Janelle and Mary, the courtroom was already staggering under the weight of the emotional and financial bombshells. But the prosecution saved what they termed the most compelling piece of evidence for last. They rolled in a battery-operated sound system. The judge nodded, and the courtroom was filled instantly with Kody Brown's voice, not the carefully coached, television-honed version. This was raw and unfiltered and intimate. It began with an uneasy phone call between Kody and one of his older kids, perhaps one of Janelle's sons. His tone was tight, strained. The son had questioned him about why he hadn't attended a family function, and Kody lost it. "I don't owe anyone anything anymore. I'm tired of being disrespected by people who don't even live under my roof," he growled. The courtroom froze. There was no context, no sugarcoating. It was anger pure and direct. A father frustrated and frankly unrecognizable to fans who had followed him for years on television. The audio continued. In the next clip, Robyn could be heard trying to calm him down in the background. "Kody, please," she breathed. "Don't shout like that." But he didn't relent. "She's coercing the kids against me," he spat. "Christine is going to think she can just leave and still dictate how they perceive me. That's never going to happen." That statement was a bombshell. The desire to control, not merely finances or wives, but how the children perceive him was now exposed. At which point, gasps filled the courtroom. Even Robyn, sitting in the witness bench, looked down and put her hand over her mouth. What came next was a voice memo Kody had recorded to himself, probably never intended to be heard outside his phone, but it was uncovered from a cloud backup by legal investigators. In the memo he sounded weary, bitter but incredibly honest. "They don't understand. I'm the one who created this family. I provided them with everything: structure, income, fame. And now they think they can just turn against me. Let them attempt it. I'll bury them under contracts. They won't see a dime from me unless they crawl back."
The room fell silent. Then there were murmurs. Then silence once again. Those same words reverberated off all of the courtroom walls. This was more than a father standing up for his pride. This was a man threatening legal battle to the very family he had sworn to defend. And then there was the most appalling clip of all. In what was an apparent in-person fight, maybe caught unknowingly on a phone left on a countertop, Kody was berating one of his kids, a teen probably. The voice, although slightly muffled, picked up enough to be audible. "You're just like your mother," he snarled, "always playing the victim. You have no clue what real pressure is. I'm the only one attempting to hold this family together." There was silence. Then a soft, shaking voice replied, "I just wanted to know why you didn't attend my graduation." That instant broke the courtroom's emotional center. Women openly cried. Robyn quietly wept in the witness stand. Janelle hid her face, visibly fighting tears. And Kody sat frozen, looking straight ahead. Eyes locked, face impassive. The judge, normally strict about following procedure, called a 5-minute recess, not because procedure required it, but because the courtroom needed a moment to catch its breath. But one last audio recording remained. It was a personal telephone conversation between Kody and Mary, recorded only 6 months prior to their public breakup. The tone was placid, but unnerving. "You're lucky I'm still allowing you to film," Kody told her. You think TLC wants just you? You're here because of me. You're replaceable. Mary's voice was barely above a whisper. She replied, I've given 30 years of my life. He interrupted her. Yeah, and I've given you visibility. Let's not pretend that's an equal trade. That statement stung. The manipulation, the unfairness, the calculating cruelty. No screaming, no crashing thunder in the background. Just Kody, quietly reminding her of his authority. When the last audio file stopped, the courtroom fell silent once more. Not because of shock this time, but because of something more profound. Understanding. The mask had slipped, and what was underneath wasn't the charming matriarch of a polygamy empire. It was a man clinging to power as everything disintegrated. And then came the prosecution. They addressed the judge and said, Your Honor, we present this recording as direct evidence not just of manipulation, but of chronic emotional coercion of children in the family. These are not aberrations, they're habits. The judge inclined his head slowly. The seriousness was dawning. This wasn't about cronyism. It wasn't about financial opacity. It was about abuse, about broken trust, about voices, some youthful, some muted, finally having a hearing. While court recessed for lunch, news sites erupted with headlines. Social media spun into a frenzy. #Kody Brown was trending on all platforms. Fans who had spent more than a decade watching the show now were getting a glimpse of Kody. They never made it to TV. In the background, TLC executives were in crisis mode already. Would they sever ties? Would they broadcast the courtroom melodrama as a special? Would they confront the bombshells, or remain mum? In the courtroom meanwhile, the ball was back in the defense's court. Kody's attorneys had rehearsed denials, claims and rationalizations. But would any of that wipe away what had just been revealed? Kody was quiet. His lawyer spoke to him in a low tone, but he didn't move. His jaw set hard, knuckles white as he clutched the table edge. The public had watched Kody blow up before, defensively, proudly, even explosively, but never silently, and that silence spoke louder than words ever could. By this point, it wasn't so much about what Kody had done, it was about what he had become. A man so involved in image and power that he lost sight of what fatherhood, partnership and leadership are all about. But there was yet to be more. The courtroom was thick with tension, as all the spectators settled back into their seats after the break. Spectators whispered. Reporters typed furiously on their laptops, and the judge adjusted his robes with a scowl. But the true attention was on the man who sat quietly at the defense table, Kody Brown. For more than a decade, he had been the focus of a national television sensation. Millions had seen him navigate 4 wives, dozens of children, and the intricacies of plural marriage. Today, he was not a reality television star. He was a man sworn to testify. The bailiff rose and called out, Mr. Kody Brown, take the stand. The room became quiet as he stood up. Kody approached the witness stand stiffly, as if in a robot. He refused to look at anyone. Robyn, who sat in the room across from him, looking red-eyed and visibly shaking. He lifted his right hand. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? I do, Kody replied. His voice was low, gravelly, tense. He took a seat, and the defense attorney stepped forward. Mr. Brown, the attorney started, you've listened to the witness accounts. You've listened to the sound recordings. Can you describe this court what was actually happening within your family in your own words? Kody breathed in. My family was breaking up, and I was trying my best to keep it together. You all heard me frustrated. Yes, you heard me upset. But what you didn't hear was how many nights I lay awake, praying for answers, trying to learn how to lead. The courtroom listened in silence, but it wasn't sympathy Kody was getting, it was scrutiny. I've done wrong, he went on, but I never emotionally abused my kids. I was harsh with them at times. I said things I regret. But that's being twisted. The defense lawyer nodded. And what about the clip, where you told Mary that she was replaceable? Kody gritted his teeth. That was out of context. I was mad. We were going through a business negotiation. In fact, not a romantic tiff. You all want to portray me as this villain. But you forget. I provided, I led, I fathered 18 children. But then the prosecution stood. The tone of the room changed. Mr. Brown, the prosecutor started. You claim to be attempting to keep your family together. But audio recordings indicate you threatening not to provide money unless your family crawled back. Do you deny that? Kody frowned. That was a private recording, never intended to be made public. But did you say it? Yes, I said it. But again, it was said out of context. The prosecution remained unruffled. Context or not, do you think it's okay to economically blackmail the mothers of your kids? To leverage money in family conflicts? Kody didn't respond immediately. Finally, he remarked, I was desperate. Desperate enough to emotionally blackmail your own children? No, he declared emphatically. Never my children. The prosecutor paced slowly around the courtroom. Then they showed the now notorious graduation video again, the one in which a child had asked why Kody hadn't appeared. Kody's face spasmed as his own words reverberated through the room once more. You're just like your mother. You don't know what real pressure is. Was that desperation? Mr. Brown? The prosecutor requested. Kody gazed at his shoes. I was wrong, he eventually admitted. I should have been there. That brief moment revealed a crack in the armor. For the first time in months, Kody took blame without trying to justify it. But the prosecution wasn't done. Let's discuss the allegations of favoritism. Tell the court why Robyn and her children were treated so much better during the pandemic, while the other families were basically shut off. Kody shifted uncomfortably in his seat. Robyn followed the rules, he said. She was careful. The others weren't. Rules you created. Yes, for everyone's safety. Yet multiple testimonies including Robyn's confirmed that you spent the vast majority of your time at Robyn's house. Doesn't that suggest favoritism? I had to choose a base, Kody said. A primary residence during lockdown. The courtroom murmured again. It was becoming clear, Kody was using logic to cover wounds. But the wounds were still visible. The prosecutor leaned forward. Did you ever stop to think about how that decision would affect the children who didn't live in Robyn's home? Kody was taken aback for a moment. Then he spoke softly. I didn't think they'd despise me for it. The judge held up a hand, calling for order in the room. But it was too late. The tension had erupted. As Kody settled back into his chair, he finally glanced at Robyn. Their eyes met for an instant, and something was exchanged between them. Not anger, not betrayal. Something more agonizing. Regret. The prosecution wrapped up their interrogation with a last, chilling remark. No further questions, Your Honor, but let the record reflect. This trial's not about a man who failed. It's about a man who wouldn't look at how his control lost him. The one thing he said he was protecting his family. Kody was excused from the witness stand. He did not go back to his seat. He sat in the back of the courtroom, looking at the ground, and the court continued. But the public wouldn't. Not after what they had just seen. Within hours, clips from his testimony plastered social media. TikTok users spliced the audio with video from the show. Ex-fans turned critics. Others voiced sympathy, calling it a slow-motion tragedy. The trial had almost reached its conclusion, but the harm had already been done. TLC executives were meeting secretly, deliberating if there was a future for the show. There were rumors of spin-offs centered on the wives independently of Kody. Some insiders said Robyn had already been approached about a solo docuseries, and the children. A number had already spoken out online, both expressing pain and relief that the truth was finally being revealed. The once glorious Brown family dynasty, founded on cohesion, religion, and TV ratings, was crumbling in front of the world's eyes. But one last chapter was left. It all boiled down to this. Following weeks of tearful testimony, clandestine audio recordings, and raw public disintegration of a formerly iconic family, the courtroom braced for the ultimate moment, the verdict. Outside the courthouse, reporters, fans, and onlookers with cameras and microphones accumulated in increasing numbers. Hashtags such as #KodyTrial, #Robyn testifies, and #Sister Wives Fallout trended on social media. All major news outlets had a live stream in their queue, and the world watched. Inside the courtroom, no glamour existed, just nerves, quiet, anticipation. The judge went back to the bench, his expression inscrutable. The clerk handed him the typed verdict, in a manila envelope. You could sense the heft in the room. It was as if time itself had gotten stuck. Kody slumped, staring at the table before him. Robyn was a couple of rows back, her hands wrapped in her lap, fingers pale from how hard they were clutched together. Mary, Janelle, and Christine had not come back for the final judgment. They said what needed to be said, and departed.
The judge pushed up his glasses and started. His court considered the evidence brought before it in the case of family financial dishonesty and allegations of emotional abuse against Mr. Kody Brown. His voice was even, calibrated, but every syllable pounded like a drumbeat. With respect to the financial claims, this court concludes that while Mr. Brown demonstrated unilateral and irresponsible management of jointly held assets, there is not enough evidence to qualify these actions as criminal fraud. No criminal charges will be filed in this regard. A small step by Kody, his first in minutes. But the judge wasn't done. But the emotional abuse allegations, especially as they involve minor children, constitute a more serious issue. He gazed at Kody. This court does acknowledge a pattern of coercive speech, chronically documented emotional manipulation, and abuse of parental authority. On the basis of evidence presented, the court does hereupon recommend supervised family therapy be mandated, and all custody arrangements be renegotiated through the family court system with independent child advocates appointed. The room exploded, not with whoops, not with screams, but with the rush of collective understanding. Kody was being held responsible, even if he wasn't heading to prison. Kody's expression didn't alter, but his face lost all color. His lawyer put a hand on his arm, whispering something. He didn't react. Robyn, on the other hand, was crying out loud. But whether it was because of relief or heartbreak, it was impossible to say. The ruling wasn't merely legal. It was symbolic. It declared to the world, Kody Brown might have constructed an empire, but one that fissured from the inside out, and now that empire was crumbling. Live on television. But that was only the start of the backlash. Hours following the decision, TLC issued a cryptic but insightful statement. TLC has always maintained the health and well-being of those who appear on our network as its #1 concern. In response to current events, we are now considering the direction of Sister Wives in the future. Translation: the show we know may be over. Insiders started spilling information almost right away. Word has it, per production team, camera crews were already being redirected. Certain scenes shot earlier in the season would probably never see the light of day. And certain episodes, specifically those with younger kids, were allegedly pulled out of rotation for legal reasons. But that's where things got interesting. Rather than a peaceful fade-out, the Sister Wives world erupted into something different. Christine, now happily remarried and living in Utah, announced she was partnering with a major streaming platform for a limited docuseries. Her tagline: "You've heard his version. Now it's time for ours." Janelle launched a podcast titled Healing from the Inside Out, focusing on women in high-control relationships. Mary, she published a memoir, one that appeared on the bestseller list in 48 hours. The first chapters contained shocking revelations about her last years living with the Browns, revelations even die-hard fans were unaware of. And Robyn? Nothing. Complete and utter nothing. She disappeared from the internet. No posts, no sightings, no interviews. But a week after, TMZ disclosed that she had turned down several lucrative offers from networks and book publishers. Robyn was done being part of the circus, according to sources familiar with her. Whether guilt, shame, or maybe just sheer exhaustion, nobody knew. But one thing was sure, the Brown family was no longer one family. They were now individuals, some mending, some thriving, some stranded in the ruin. Kody, the most lost of them all, was seen living in a rented home outside Flagstaff. Alone, no wives, no show, no spotlight. Ex-fans argued his legacy online. Was he a master manipulator who finally got what was coming to him? Or a man who broke beneath the expectations and pressures that no one could ever really comprehend? The internet did what it does best. It divided, speculated, moved on. But for everyone within the story, there was no moving on. Not yet. The kids, many of whom had grown up on television, were now making their own ways far from the underbelly of TLC. Some remained silent. Others spoke out for family reform and mental health advocacy using their platforms. One compelling video included Gabriel Brown, addressing the viewer directly. "We didn't sign up to be a part of a brand. We were children. Now we're just trying to survive." That video alone had more than 12 million views. The Sister Wives tradition, once built around plural love and religious faith, had become something far grittier and far more authentic. It was now a tale of disillusion, of responsibility, and of rebuilding. And perhaps, just perhaps, that's the most authentic version yet. Because while the final gavel has dropped on the courtroom drama, The true story continues. In living rooms, courtrooms, therapy offices, and quiet moments of personal growth. The cameras might stop rolling, but the echoes of what happened inside that courtroom will last a lifetime. And to everyone still watching, still wondering, this isn't just about Kody. It's about what happens when control replaces connection, when love becomes leverage, and when someone finally utters enough.